All right, welcome everybody to today's lunch and e-learn session from VARC Solutions. We are going to be talking about 1099s, W-2s, e-filing, all that stuff. It's a very important and timely topic. Obviously, we're in the middle of January, where this is something that needs to be addressed. If you haven't already, um, maybe you're here to learn how to do some of this stuff. Maybe you're just like, hey, we think we've already done it, but we're not sure if we did it right. Maybe you'll touch on some topics that might be helpful for that. All right. Well, today, as we always do, we like to talk about problems and then solutions to those problems. And one of the problems at this time of year is tax filings. Things like W-2s, 1099, NEC, non-employee compensation, 1099 miscellaneous forms. Those are things that we need to get done by the deadline so that we're not having to file late, pay penalties, or have to do corrections because we didn't do them right, all those types of issues. And so that's what we are going to be talking about today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I've got a little bit of a slide presentation to highlight some of the key components here. All right. Just get my screens all organized so that I'm not looking around all the time. Okay. So, like I said, today we're talking about 1099s and W-2s and basically how to avoid penalties, how to avoid doing it wrong and then having to correct it later. So in terms of the agenda, we're going to talk very, very quickly through each one of these agenda items. What are the deadlines? What are the thresholds? What should be included? Maybe what should be excluded? Who should get these things? And then we'll talk about how do you do this yourself versus, if you wanted VARC Solutions help to get the 1099s done on your behalf. And then also just some of the biggest problems and challenges that we see with not only our own books and 1099 filings, but also with our clients. So that's what we're going to be talking about. First off, let's talk about deadlines. Pretty much everything's due by the end of January in terms of e-filing and letting the IRS know and recipients know about what you've submitted. Since January 31st this year falls on a Saturday, you actually have until February the 2nd to do your 1099 filings as well as get your W-2s out to your employees. And one just quick note, some people ask about paper filing versus e-filing. Quite frankly, we recommend e-filing no matter what. But if you have 10 or more 1099s that you need to file, you are required to e-file by the IRS. It's a good practice anyways, because it just makes the process easier. People get the forms quicker. And then if they need a paper, that's always a backup. You can always do that too. All right. So in terms of, so those are the deadlines. So here's a topic on what are the thresholds, what's included, what should be included. And so I'm going to focus on 1099 NEC, non-employee compensation. But just know that there's also a 1099 miscellaneous form, and it's used for slightly different reporting of certain types of payments. But generally speaking, the biggest challenge here is on the NEC form, and it is anything you pay to a non-employee. So that could be a contract laborer, it could be a service provider that's not a corporation, where you paid them primarily for labor. You paid them for services rendered. And the amount of those payments was at least $600. Okay, in the calendar filing year that we're talking about. So, for example, if you've got somebody that you paid for services that was not an employee, and they were providing services or labor for you, you paid them over $600. Generally speaking, you're going to need to give them a 1099 NEC form. Okay. What's typically included in that is labor services. We're not talking about things like product purchases, material purchases, supplies. Those are excluded from this category. We're really talking about service level type of income for that person that you paid. One interesting caveat here, and it's quite frankly, it's a little weird. Credit card payments, like if you paid that contractor via a credit card or debit card or PayPal or Stripe, you do not need to provide that vendor or that contractor with an NEC form for payments that were paid via those methods. If you paid them via credit card, debit card, PayPal, Stripe, those are already being reported by the financial institution, the bank, PayPal, Stripe. They're already reporting that to the IRS on a 1099-K form. But again, that's not maybe the most typical. The most typical is maybe I'm paying them via ACH, maybe I'm paying them via physical check, things like that. And those types of payments need to be reported. And if you're doing both, you're going to need to be able to carve out the parts that weren't paid via credit card that would be included on the 1099. So obviously it can get a little complicated there. But those are some of the details in terms of the thresholds. By the way, the 1099 miscellaneous form, it doesn't have that same sort of threshold, but it has different categories. 1099 miscellaneous form is more for rent payments to a landlord, for example, legal settlement payments, as well as royalty payments. Okay, whereas so it's not so much about the services or labor that's being paid for; it's more the rent, royalties, and legal settlements. So again, some kind of interesting categories there, but that's generally what that's all about. All right, who should be getting these forms? For your W-2s, obviously those are being sent to your employees, the one you're calculating taxes for, you're withholding taxes on, you're paying to the IRS on behalf of. That's obviously what goes on the W-2s. To make sure that you've got the right information when you hire somebody, you need to be collecting their identification information on an I-9 form. Okay. On that I-9 form, it's also asking for proof of identity, typically things like a social security number, driver's license, maybe a passport. Okay. And that's really to make sure that they are who they are, but also so that you can get their social security number for things like W-2 reporting. Okay. For 1099s, those are the vendors or the contractors. And when you hire, quote unquote, a 1099 contractor, you're going to have them, or you're going to need to ask them for a W-9 form. And it's the same concept, right? They're basically providing you with their legal company name, okay, or personal name. And that could be John Smith doing business as Joe's Plumbing, or John's Plumbing. And it's also to get their social security number or their EIN number. That's the information you need to be able to provide a 1099 at the end of the year. Okay. One thing that you'll probably hear from some people if you do this for your vendors and start sending these forms out, you're probably going to hear back from a few of them saying, hey, I don't need one of these. I'm an S Corp. I'm a C Corp. Don't give me one of these things. Okay. And that is true. So S Corps and C Corps don't need a 1099 NEC form. We're typically talking about sole proprietors, single member LLCs, otherwise known as disregarded entities. It's kind of a weird phrase. Basically think of it like, hey, I'm just this guy, I'm doing work, I'm charging people for it. I don't have a fancy corp, C Corp, S Corp, just me charging for some services, getting paid. Okay. Those are the folks that typically get those forms. Okay. If you're not sure if this person you're paying is an S Corp, C Corp, or needs one of these 1099 forms, quite frankly, the easiest thing to do is ask them or look at the paperwork that they provided to you when you started working with them on that W-9 form. So I'll give you an example. If one of your vendors gave you a W-9 form, they're going to be putting on that form their name, their business name, if it's different than their personal name. They're going to be checking a box on one of those forms. They're going to either say that they're an individual sole proprietor or single member LLC in that red box, or they're going to be checking the box for S Corp, C Corp, partnership, etc. Also, in the other red box in the bottom right corner, that's where they're going to be providing you with their social security number or their EIN number. Okay. It's one of those two, right? So if they've checked that box for individual sole proprietor or single member LLC, those are the folks that are eligible for a 1099. The folks in the green boxes, the S Corps, the C Corps, those are the folks that are not eligible for 1099s. Okay. All right. So that's who should be getting one of these things. Now the question is, how do you do this? So in QuickBooks, let's just assume for a second that you're using QuickBooks, either the desktop version or QuickBooks Online. Both versions have the ability to do things like W-2s and 1099s within the product. There's always an additional fee for that. Even if you've got a paid payroll subscription, there's additional fees for doing the 1099 e-filing. So just know that's the case. With QuickBooks, certain states may or may not be included. This is very granular detail. We're not going to go state by state and cover that, but I will say that there are some states that allow you to e-file in combination with the federal 1099 e-filing. Some states need a direct filing to them, so it's kind of separate from just the federal e-filing. So just know that if you do it within QuickBooks, certain states may not be included on that e-filing process. You might have to still create the forms and send those to specific states, depending on where you are. If you're using an automated payroll service, maybe you're using ADP, maybe you're using Paychex or Gusto. A lot of those services do include the W-2s and e-filing of 1099s, but it may depend on your service level, your subscription level. So again, if you're not sure, just ask them and they'll tell you. And if it's something they charge extra for, obviously they'll let you know. Just for point of reference, if you're using QuickBooks Online and you are e-filing 1099s in the, let's call it that 10 to 20 form range, it's typically about $13.99 per form for e-filing. So just as an example, if you've got 15 vendors that you're doing 1099 NECs for, that's going to be about $210, plus or minus, depending on, any other little details that might go along with that. Okay. So that's one way you could do it. If you're having VARC Solutions do it, we actually have that as a service, obviously, that we do for many of our clients. We can do the e-filing with for the federal as well as the states for you. Our pricing is a little bit different than how Intuit does it for QuickBooks. We have a $150 processing fee, plus it's $3.20 per vendor. So depending on how many vendors you're having to do that for, you can kind of do the math to figure out how much it would cost for us to do it for you. I am going to talk in just a moment about some of the challenges or things that you need to pay attention to especially if you're going to do it yourself. And one of the things that we do for clients is we do more of a detailed accounting review to make sure that the right vendors are getting the right, are eligible, the boxes are checked, you've got all the right information in that. We do an account review as well to make sure that the accounts that should or shouldn't be included on that 1099 are in fact correct. That's not included in the processing fee. It's more like if you want us to check to make sure that your accounts and vendors are set up properly, and then obviously make any corrections within the QuickBooks software first before the filing is done. We have it's $185 an hour. Usually only takes maybe 1 to 2 hours, depending on how many vendors we're talking about. But that's, 1 to 2 hours is pretty typical for that. We also do supply W-2 and 1099 NEC paper forms if you're going to print them yourself and send them yourself. And again, that's assuming there's less than 10 forms where you actually have the ability to paper file. If it's more than 10, you need to e-file. But if you do want VARC Solutions to supply the paper forms, that's basically $1.30 per sheet. So a lot of people ask, why should we help you with this, or why would you even think about asking us to do this for you? The biggest reasons are, number one, if you're just not confident, you know what you're doing, or if you're just not confident you're doing this properly, maybe you're not sure if the right vendors are included or the right accounts were used throughout the year. Or if you just want a second pair of eyes to look at your stuff and make sure that it is right, those are probably the most common reasons. And depending on how many vendors you're trying to pay, file 1099 NECs for, we actually can save you a little bit of money as well. So let's talk about some of the biggest problems and challenges, and that will really wrap up this session. So the biggest problem that we see, whether you're doing it manually or e-filing, it doesn't matter. But one of the biggest problems we see is the EIN number or the TIN number is not matching what the IRS knows about that person. Okay. So if the IRS, let's say you're filing your 1040 personal return at the end of the year, and the IRS knows you as John H. Smith, and here's your social security number. But when you hire John and he provides you with his DBA, and that DBA is, John's, plumbing repair, and he provides you with that EIN might not match what you're telling the IRS is that company name. It should be, John H. Smith. So those types of mismatches are the types of things that will get bounced back and that you'll need to correct. The other thing that we see is address verification fails. So maybe you have put in their physical address, but maybe it's not correctly formatted. Maybe you're missing a part of the physical address. That happens. Also bounced emails. A year ago, you hired this person or started working with them and they provided their email address. Now here it is almost a year later and you're e-filing these forms and you want to be able to send that vendor their form electronically and their email address doesn't work. Okay. So those types of bounced emails things have to go get corrected. We need to correct them within whatever system we're using to do this filing. We need to correct the addresses to make sure those are verified and correct. Then we might have to then correct and resend those forms. Okay. I'd say the other biggest challenge is not including the right vendors, okay, or not including the right correct contractors. And this could go either way, right? You could be sending somebody a form that shouldn't get it, like a corporation or an S corp, or you may be omitting forms for somebody that should be getting it. Okay, maybe you think that they're a corporation, but really they're a sole proprietor. Okay, or maybe you just miscategorize transactions throughout the year and this QuickBooks or the system you're using says that they're below some threshold for the included accounts. You might not give them a 1099. In fact, they maybe need to if you had just correctly categorized things throughout the year for that labor. So that's why really doing a deep dive into the accounts that were used on those transactions to those vendors is super important. Whether you do it or whether you have us do it, somebody needs to look at that. It's important to look at the vendors, the payments you made to them, the accounts that were used on those payments, on those checks, on those bills, to make sure that you've included the right accounts. I'm going to pull up two QuickBooks screens on the screen that I'm sharing here real quick, and I just want to kind of give you an example of what I'm talking about here. So if you're using QuickBooks Desktop, for example, and you go into your chart of accounts, you want to look at your COGS accounts and your expense accounts, and you may have certain accounts that you've categorized, such as contract labor, maybe it's COGS labor, maybe it's COGS labor installation. There's like a number of different categories that you might have created on your chart of accounts. So you'd want to look at those checks, and there's some reports that you can run to help with this. Basically figure out, did you use the appropriate accounts on all those transactions appropriately, or were there other accounts you used that maybe need to be included or excluded? Okay, so that's one thing. In QuickBooks Online, it's a similar story. In QuickBooks Online, you're going to have a chart of accounts. So if you go to accounting, chart of accounts here, same thing. And you'll want to look at your accounts, look at your COGS accounts, look at your expense accounts, and you're looking for labor related accounts, things like contract labor, services labor, just any type of labor type of category. And again, you want to make sure that the actual transactions being used to pay those specific vendors are being categorized appropriately. And then also within QBO, if you go to your expenses and then the vendors list, this is where you'd want to look at the vendors, and you can go in and verify that the business ID, okay, social security number or tax identification number there is there. And this is also where you can check the box to say, hey, track these payments for 1099s to help them flow through the right process. Okay. All right. So what I've tried to do is kind of give you again the highlights, the overviews, some of the things to watch out for. If this is something we can help out with, please do just let us know. We'd be happy to help you. That's kind of what we do. If you have any questions, feel free then to put them into the questions panel within your window right now. You can also email us at team@varcsolutions.com. So team@varcsolutions.com. And if you need help with any of this 1099, W-2s, tax form supplies, any of that stuff, we would obviously love to help you with that. And if you ever need any help with anything related to QuickBooks, again, that's what we are here for. We are QuickBooks experts. We've got a 16-person team. We're all certified experts in QuickBooks, and we can help you out at a very, very high level and do a better job than Intuit does if you ever call them. So thanks again for coming to our Lunch and Learn today, and let us know if we can help you. And like I said before, we'll stick around for a few more minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the questions panel, and we will make sure and take care of those.